Welcome to the show, Wendy. I want you to start by introducing yourself to our listeners.
Hi, guys. I am Wendy Watson. I'm a spiritual relationship mentor. I'm a fifth generation entrepreneur. And I just love teaching people how to cultivate healthy relationships, how to lead with love, and create a love legacy that will last generations.
Oh, I love that. Such important work. And that is why you are here today to
Yes.
share that work with our listeners to give them some tools. Let's start with you explaining kind of what your work looks like and why it is so needed and important in today's world.
Right? So, who struggles with cultivating relationships?
Putting my
Just
hand in
about.
frame here. Yes.
Yes, just about everybody. So I have this awesome recipe. It's like building tacos,
I love, oh, tacos are my favorite. Okay.
right? Who
Got
doesn't
me.
love
Yes.
tacos? And how to structure a relationship in general, right? Because everybody needs a base in order to do something, right? In order to figure out what tacos you're going to make, you need to figure out what a taco looks like and how you define the taco.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
So once you create that base, then you can use that to apply it to different types of relationships, whether it's a human to human, a relationship with an emotion, a relationship with an event, your relationship with judgment or vulnerability, and really honing in on that for yourself, regardless of how you were raised or what you hear in the exterior world or other people's projections, and really honing in and owning that for yourself.
Oh, I love that. When you first introduced yourself and said relationship coach, right? Relationship person, I'm guessing everyone's mind space went external relationship. So I want you to
Yes.
take just a minute
Yeah.
and speak a little more to the relationships we have with our emotions and with those inner thoughts and with ourselves, because I think that is something we are not very good at. Even labeling as a relationship, let alone spending time to figure out what that looks like and how we can be better with it.
Right. So relationship
That's right.
with
Welcome
Kat.
to the show. Right?
This is Clementine. It's really important to be able to define for ourselves who and what judgment looks like, right? Who we're willing to be judged by, what judgment looks like for us, the difference between being judged and being vetted. There's a big difference in that it's still a type of judgment, but there's an honor in one versus there's a negative connotation to the other. But the negative connotation comes from other people's projections. Oh, don't be judged. Don't do this. Don't do that. Blah, blah, blah. Well, why not?
Yes. Why not?
Like
Why not?
that's my big thing for the last 24 hours is why not question everything. That was my big epiphany this morning is
You
I
know, you know what's so funny about that though is I had a call yesterday and it was a very similar epiphany. And they said their phrase that they've been using was "says who." Says who? Right? It's that
right.
same thing. Does it matter? Like just because someone's saying it doesn't mean we have to accept it immediately as important, as truth, as any of those things. We get to define that relationship with what
Exactly.
was just said.
Exactly. Or even if they don't agree with it and they're like, "Oh, you shouldn't do that." Well, why not? Just because it doesn't work for you doesn't mean it doesn't work for me.
Right.
Right? So figuring out what works for you,
Yes.
owning it and being like, I don't care what you think. I mean, I do, but I
Yes.
don't.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Like, it's not going to impact the confidence that I have in what I believe in. I mean, so here's an example. My mother told me a year ago that she was afraid for me because she was afraid for my life because of some of the things that I was into. And I was
Okay.
just like, you don't need to be.
Right.
God's got me. I'm good.
Right. Right.
And she's like, well, I'm your mother. I'm going to be fearful anyways. And I'm like, well, then I'm going to hold hope for you
Yeah.
instead of fear. Right. So just because that doesn't work for her and
Right.
whatever her relationship with God is, doesn't mean it doesn't work for me and that it's not coming from the same source.
Right. Right. Right.
It just means that that's what I need to hear based off of my journey and what my goals, what my mission is. And I'm just going to hold space for you. I don't want you to live in fear. So I'm going to hold hope for you, even if you can't do it for yourself.
Yeah.
And a year later, she's fully accepting and like has surrendered. And I'm just like,
Right.
my
Right.
hope worked.
But I think that's really important because I do think, we are all on different journeys. And a lot
Yeah.
of times we don't think through that, right? Like
Mhm.
we're not consciously going. Um, their journey looks different than mine. And so we're looking at the same experience from different perspectives and different angles. Um, and that's where I think that relationship piece is very important, and taking the time to define and really know what those relationships are for you, and to maybe even somewhat let go of what those relationships are for other people with the same stories.
Right. I'm doing this series on our relationship with money,
Mm,
right?
very
And there's
important.
and there's 6 subcomponents to money.
Yeah.
And trauma, so there's one gentleman who's been through trauma with money. And so when I asked him for 3 words on the first 3 words that come up when he thinks of the word debt, and one of them, which was the most poignant, was prison,
Mm,
right? So if he's thinking
yeah.
about his relationship with financial debt as a prison,
Yeah.
what do you think that's doing to his financial relationship in general and causing a stagnation with money versus looking as debt as leverage to being able to leverage your cash flow in order to be able to use that and better utilize the cash that you have so that you can go out and make more money,
Right. Right. Yeah.
right? So even people talk about financial mindset and financial strategies and all these things, but what is your relationship with receiving money, with debt, with investing money, with the loss of
Yes.
money? If you don't overcome and reframe the story or reframe your relationship with the trauma of loss of money, then your financial situation is not going to be as abundant as you would like it to be.
Right. And it's so interesting because I don't think people, again, are aware of the power of our thoughts to completely shape our world, right?
Yeah.
So if you have this negative relationship with money, or with anything, that is shaping how you perceive anything happening out in what you're experiencing in life.
Yes.
Like, that is the power of thoughts.
Yes.
Right.
Absolutely. And Harvard did an 85-year study on happiness, the longest
Yes.
study
Yes.
ever done
Yes.
on happiness. And what did it all boil down to? The
Relationships and
quality,
connection.
yes, the quality
Yes.
of your relationships.
Yes.
So let's give you I mean, I don't know anybody else out there that literally has an instruction manual that says, here's how to, I'm going to guide you on how to figure this out for yourself. But this is an instruction manual on how to do
Yes. Okay. So let's before we jump into how the world looks when this is all solved, because that's my favorite part.
it.
But what, on a broad brushstrokes overview, okay?
Mhm.
What does that recipe? What does my taco look like? What is that playbook
Ooh.
for getting there?
Well, first of all, you have to define what a taco is,
Yeah.
right? How do you define a taco? For me, I define a relationship as a connection between 2 points. I've been able to narrow it down to one sentence.
Yeah.
Okay. Then you have to figure out like what kind of tacos are you making? Is it beef? Is it chicken? Is it a dessert taco, a breakfast taco?
The
Right?
chocolate taco.
What ingredients do you want in your taco? right? So is it trust? Is it collaboration? Is it affection? Is it support? And just as a brief example, collaboration can be put in any relationship, right? If you want to improve your relationship with exercise, then you have to collaborate with the exercise routines or activities that are best fit for your body and your capabilities. That's collaboration in terms of relationship with exercise,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
Trust. I trust myself to know my limits when I'm going
Yes.
to exercise, right? I trust myself that I know that I have a neck injury, and so I'm not going to do things that are going to aggravate my neck injury,
Right. Right. Yes.
right? So, one of my must haves is providing a safe harbor, right? So, we have to be in conjunction with each other. So, when I'm having a rough day, you're helping me weather the storm, and vice versa.
Yeah.
Right? So looking at that in terms of exercise again, is like when I'm having a rough day, am I going to utilize you and I'm going to go for a walk and I'm going to,
Mm,
go get on the treadmill in order to up my spirits?
yeah.
How does that relate?
Yeah.
Right? And so and then again, your relationship with each one of those ingredients.
Mm,
What does support look like? What does affection look like? What does a safe harbor mean to you?
hmm.
So as you put these ingredients in the taco, you know what you're putting in the taco.
It's
And
intentional.
it's super intentional.
Yeah.
And then it's scaling, right? Some people love a lot of guacamole. Some people love a lot of cheese, right? Like,
You are like speaking my love language right now, by the way.
right?
Okay.
So how much of what, like what's the most important, like which ingredient is the foundation, the tortilla or the lettuce wrap or whatever it is that you're using for the taco? Which is the foundation? Which is the meat? Which is the condiments? And then what is the spicy stuff, the extra flavoring that you put on top that you sprinkle, right? Is that the chives or the onions or is the cheese the sprinkle on the top? Like, what is that for you? And so that you have the right mixture.
Yeah.
You have the right blend of meat and foundation and flavor and crunch and texture, all the things that you want in a taco.
Right. I want all the things in a taco.
Right. Well, and there's no reason why you can't have all the
I can have
things.
all the things in my taco.
Yes, you can.
So no, I love this. I do love this because it visually allows people is allowing me to think through, okay, if my relationships are this way, whether they are external relationships with my partner or my kids, or the relationships I have with money, right, with some of these internal conversations that follow me around and definitely change my perspective and experience when I go out into the world, right? It's giving me a very visual system, and I'm a visual person, to go, okay, this is how I get intentional around what these different relationships not can be, but need to be in order for me to show up and design the life that I want.
Yes. Yeah,
Yes.
everybody relates to tacos.
Yes.
I don't know, I don't care where you are around the world. I've been to Israel, I've been to Scotland, I've been to
Everyone
the
loves tacos.
Caribbean.
I know.
Everybody knows what
It's
tacos are.
it's so funny because I teach. I used a taco analogy a lot when I teach, and I was teaching a
Yes, you do.
practicing happiness class last night, and I was going on and on about tacos, and people were like, "You really like tacos?" I'm like, "Absolutely." Like, we had tacos
There's
at
a
our
whole
wedding. Our unborn kid we named Chorizo Prince. We love tacos.
there's a whole day around tacos, Taco Tuesday.
I know.
Like,
That was, yes. Okay.
everybody,
I love it.
this
Yes.
is how I want people to feel about their relationships. I love my relationships. I want relationship
Right.
Wednesday or whatever it
That's
is.
right. And that's it's funny because that is something I said last night when I was talking about tacos, is that some of us need Taco Tuesday to happen on a Friday, and that's okay. You're still getting what you want, right? Like,
Exactly.
It's on your terms. And that's what we're talking about here, like defining relationships the way you need them to work for yourself,
Yeah.
on your terms that fit your life and your dreams and your, your everything. So Taco
Yeah.
Tuesday can be on a Wednesday or a Thursday or every day.
Yeah. Or no day if you don't
Or
like
no day.
tacos.
Although if you don't eat tacos any day, I'm not sure this podcast is for you. I'm just gonna throw that out. Okay, so let's say that everyone starts getting this intentional about their relationships, their external relationships and their internal relationships. I want you to paint the listeners here a vision of what our world looks like, because sometimes it's hard for us to dream about these things that seem out of reach. What can our world look like when we are this intentional about all the relationships in our lives?
Imagine a world where we all just lead with love, where we all just accept each other. We understand that everybody's on their own journey. We're working together to help each other on that journey based off of what our roles are in life and with that person, and the cohesiveness and the much deeper understanding and this oneness with connection, because we're really connected based off of all these healthy ingredients and with being leading from our true authentic self. Like, can you imagine just being yourself, completely unbridled, no apologies, no nothing, and yet still love everybody for who they are or for who they want to be?
Yes. Yeah. Isn't that powerful?
And
Doesn't
that,
it? Everyone want
yes.
that? It's like everyone loves tacos. I think that is that's the vision I work at every day in my work, in my life, right? I think it is something everyone wants because it taps in to those human needs of being seen and heard and valued and loved and belonging
Yes.
without sacrificing yourself, right? So
Yes.
much
And
of it
I
is
need to I
sacrificing.
need to say this. Also imagine, because life's going to happen. But
Yes.
imagine spending the smallest amount of time possible being triggered or being in trauma, and being able to utilize that energy inside of you, that love, the relationships that you've built externally or internally, and being
Mhm.
able to utilize those to get you out of being triggered, to get you out of the trauma, out of the mud, out of the dredge faster and easier, so that
Yes.
you're only there for seconds, let alone minutes, hours, days, months, years.
Yes.
And
Yes.
all the ripple effect
Mhm.
of that, right? If people are spending less time in those spaces, imagine how much happier, how much more productive, how much more traveling, how much a better bond that you'll have with your kids, and how much better quality time you're going to have with your kids while you're here.
Yes. 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 Because if we shorten the amount of time we spend in those negative emotions,
Yes.
right, then we're making more time for all the positive emotions and what we actually want to live and experience here.
Oh my gosh. Have you like ever gotten rid of something in your life that wasn't serving you, and now you're like, "Oh my god, I have so much more time."
Yes. And then I do that. I kick myself and go, why didn't I do that sooner? Imagine like how much time I would have, not wasted doing that. But
Yes.
yes.
And now you can go, now you're like, "Oh my gosh, what do I do with all this time?" And then the inspiration and the creativity comes in, and you're like, "Oh, now I can take my dog to the tennis courts and
That's
play,
right. Yeah, that's right.
play tennis with my dog, or whatever it is."
That is probably someone's taco right there. They want to
That
play
was
tennis.
that was one of my
There you
tacos.
go. I
Yes,
love it.
absolutely.
I love it. No, it's so true. And it's interesting. I was reading a book recently. And again, I say this on every podcast. I don't remember the name of the book. I read too many books and that's all up in my head. And my ADHD brain won't hold on to that. But the premise of the book was that, you know, all of those negative emotions arise from this idea of fear, right? It's built into us as a survival mechanism. But the one thing that if you are doing it, you cannot fear, and that is love. So if we spend more and more of our time in love, our bodies and our brains literally cannot manage and handle the fear. Like it cannot coexist with the
Well,
love and the gratitude.
actually,
Yeah.
I'm going to debate you on that
Okay. Well, it's a book, so it's
because
not me, you know.
yeah.
Yes.
So to me, when you say fear, I think of ego,
Well, yeah. Yes.
right? So I love incorporating 10% of ego into my relationships, and I use it as my devil's advocate,
Oh, yes. Interesting. Yes.
right? Is
Yep.
this really what you want to do? Yes, and this is why. Or
Yes.
no, thank you for questioning me, but only 10%. If it gets above 10%, then it starts taking over,
Yeah.
and I'm not leading with love, I'm leading with ego.
Yes. Yes. No, that
So for
makes
me,
perfect sense. Yeah.
yeah. So for me, I enjoy using it. We can't ignore, I mean, we can ignore it if we want to, but it's not healthy because it's always going to be there. We can't just find our ego, take it out and throw it away. Like it doesn't work that way.
Right.
So how can I use it to my benefit?
Yes.
How can I be opportunistic with this portion of me? And what is my relationship with my ego?
Right. Well, no, that's exactly it. So, and it's really interesting because in the book and what it was talking, it was actually brain science, right? And it was like your fear lives in your reptile brain. Your higher functioning creativity, thought processes, love lives in this human part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex, the thinking brain.
Mhm.
So if we spend all of our time in fear, we are completely shutting down the big, beautiful part of our brain. So
Yes,
it's
but
about using your, yeah,
if you're only operating through this, then you're not
you're not
utilizing
receiving the
this for the
signals
tool.
here. Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Right. To be like, hey, danger, red flags. One of my
yes,
favorite quotes from Steve Harvey is, I don't collect red flags. Right. So
right,
every
right,
time this throws up a red flag, what is it trying to tell me?
yes,
Do I agree with it? Do I not agree with it? What do I do with the information? And that is my relationship with my ego, with my fear is okay, you're telling me something. What are you telling me? How do I utilize the information? How is it going to benefit
right,
what I'm doing or what I'm thinking through?
right. Is it serving me or am I going to use it to serve what I am trying to do here in life?
Yeah.
And that's where you're always going to have the reptilian part of your brain. We
You
wouldn't be
can't
alive.
take it out.
But when we can look at it from our higher functioning cognitive
Yeah.
brain, when we can look at it from that lens of love and from the lens of what do my relationships with everything, what do I want them to be, and we're being intentional, that's where this becomes a tool. That's where those triggers become a tool. But when we just live here, they never become a tool, right?
Right.
Then you're just
Yes.
in this heightened, stressed out state of mind that honestly a lot of people are in constantly.
Yep.
That's the world we are in right now. But I love that you are giving us a formula to say, okay, let's step up into this space to figure out our relationship with this space and also with everything externally.
And
Right?
how do they relationship together?
Yes. Yes.
Right. So you have to have, or I have to have, I'm going to use my I statements. I have to have a relationship with this.
Mm-hmm.
I have to have a relationship with this.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's the relationship between the two,
Yes.
right? There's always a triangle,
Mm.
right? My relationship with this, my relationship with that, and then their relationship together,
Mm. Yeah.
right?
Yes.
So, how does that triangle work in terms of what you're trying to accomplish or what your vision is or what your business is or whatever, right? So I'm trying to think of another. Like I'm working with a couple individually,
Yeah.
right? Either as a massage therapist or as a relationship mentor. I tend to work with, so last year I had a couple that I worked with together, which was beautiful because of the vulnerability and the openness that they displayed together. Now I'm working with a couple individually and separately. No matter which format I work with them in, it's still, here's my relationship with her,
Yeah.
here's my relationship with him, and then you guys still have to work on your relationship together.
That's right. Yep. Yes. And it is, and I think it's interesting because when you view it in that perspective as people, it makes a lot of sense. And now in my head, I'm going, okay, so if we go back to the financial relationship and my relationship with money, what is that third relationship? And that's where like my head is now spinning on, okay, I see how these different ingredients and stuff need to work together too, to really have a strong relationship where everything's working together.
Right. So let's take money, for example, right? So we have receiving, spending, debt,
Mm,
saving, investing, and loss.
okay. Yeah.
And if you don't, if so, the foundation of that, the base of the taco, is receiving money. Because if you don't receive money, you can't save, you can't go and,
Can't do anything else. Yeah.
right? You can't do anything else,
Yeah.
right? So that's the base of it, right? But once you receive the money, then you have to know what to do with it.
Mm, yeah.
And that's where the next four relationships fall into play: the debt, the savings, the investing, the spending, right? And you have to
Right.
figure out, right? That's the meat of the taco.
Right. Right.
Well, so the debt, the savings, and the spending is the meat of the taco, right? The investing is the condiment.
Sprinkles. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
that's the condiments. That's the lettuce, the
Oh,
tomatoes, that kind of stuff, right? And then the loss is the sprinkle on top because what your relationship is with loss affects the whole rest of the taco, but it's not the foundation.
right.
Right? If you don't have a healthy relationship with loss of money, you're not
Yeah.
going to receive. You're not going to be able, you're going to have bad spending habits. You're going to have bad debt. You're going to look at investing as a no go, right?
Right. 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 Right.
Yes.
Right. And so when we go back to, in a simplified sense, when we go back to the triangle, then we'll just take two of those. So I have a relationship with receiving and I have a relationship with loss. And those two also have a relationship. And I need to understand
That's
what
right.
those are.
That's right.
Yes.
Yes.
Which makes sense, but my brain doesn't always think like this. And so I'm like, I'm seeing like, oh, I really need to sit down and spend time and go, yes, there are all of these relationships that are happening, whether or not I realize it or not. And if I let it happen on autopilot, if I let it happen without intention, how do I know if it's best serving me and what I'm trying to build here?
Well, that means your relationships are controlling you instead of
Right,
you controlling your relationships.
right. Which
They're
I think,
dictating, your relationships are dictating your world, are
yes,
dictating your success, are dictating everything about your health and wellness, everything, instead of
right,
you taking ownership, taking intention, taking agency
yes,
on dictating your relationships.
yes. And that goes back to the your thoughts give you the experiences of your life. And so if
Yes.
we're not intentional about getting those thoughts working for us, then they're doing it on their own, right?
Yep. And
And that affects
I was
everything.
talking, I was talking to this about to somebody on Sunday, and she's like, that's a lot of work.
It is. But
It
also,
is.
you
It's a
end
lot of
up in
joy.
such a better place because you
Yes.
have the time for all the
Yes.
love and positive experiences. You have a
Yes.
life that you are intentionally designing for yourself and on your terms.
And how much happier is it to be once you get over to the other side, once you drudge through the mud and you get to it, right? And you're on that side and you're like, oh my God, like this is so much better.
Yes.
This is so much
Yes.
easier. I don't have so much conflict. I can move easier because I don't feel so constricted by the energy around me.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and that's what I tell people, practicing happiness, learning how to do this. It doesn't cost anything, but it does take a lot of work.
And
Yeah.
and it takes a lot of work.
And yes, and it takes a lot of work. Yes, it does.
And it takes a lot of work. And it, for
Absolutely does.
me, anyways, it's worth it.
Yes. Yes. Same.
I'm dictating my life.
Yes.
I don't have other people controlling it for me. I met this guy yesterday, and he's like I quit drinking soda, but then every time I go over to my mother's house or my grandmother's house, they ask me 20 times over, "Hey, do you want a soda? Do you want a soda?" Even though I've told them I've quit drinking soda, and eventually I just give in.
Yeah.
And then he starts drinking soda. And what is he doing to his body by drinking soda and all the sugar and the everything else that's in it? Right. And it's like agency.
Yeah.
Take ownership. And I was like, so you gave in? And he's like, yeah, I gave in. And I was like,
It's
right. And that is an example of allowing other people to control your relationships.
yes. And it's also, again, that is a very clear picture of it is hard work,
Mhm.
but it is our work
And
too,
yes.
right?
And
And it is
again,
our
I'm going
work
to
to
change.
do.
For
Yes.
me, that's an and.
Yes. And it is ours to do because we have agency. And I think that is what I go back to again and again in my work is I'm not sure how awake we all are to the agency and control we have over our lives and our dreams and how we show up in the world and the impact that that has. And
Yes.
so I love that this is expanding into relationships between other people and between all those inner relationships we have with ourselves, because it is taking that intention that is so needed, taking that reflection and really putting it into practice to say, okay, here are all of these little relationships. I say little, but it's just because there's so many of them. Here are all of
Right.
these relationships that I'm navigating unaware that are influencing and impacting how I am showing up in the world.
How many
And
moms
now
out?
I know that I have agency over that and I can
Yes.
shape what those look like so that they can work for me.
Yes. How many moms out there have not spoken nicely to their kids when they're
Yeah.
like, "Oh, by the way, I need to do this and it costs money
Yeah.
and it's due tomorrow." And then you lash out. And then when you go to bed, you punish yourself
Yeah.
for lashing out.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Having healthy relationships with each of those components will help you to not lash out and then not punish yourself later for lashing out.
Yes. Yes.
Which means you're going to sleep better. You're going to have a better relationship with your kids. They're not going to see that. They're not going to have that experience with you as their mom.
Yes.
They're going to, by leading by example, you're going to show them that this is how easy, this is how happy, this is how, life could be.
Right. Right. Yes. And I know we talked about this previously. In a previous phone call we've had, but like the importance of younger kids and generations learning that they have this agency and this is how our thoughts work and our relationships work and this is how happiness works. Because again, in my sphere, it's like knowledge is power. It really is. And if we don't understand fundamentally how our mind works in these capacities, then we don't understand our power and agency we have over it.
Yes.
So I love that. Yes, as adults, we are leading by example here,
Yes.
and I think we can get even more intentional around, sharing this with younger people. So it's not just by example; it's here's how it works, right? Because that changes the future of our world as well.
Absolutely. Yes.
So that's our next step.
Yes.
That's what
We
we're doing
figured it.
next, right?
Yes, we figured it out. There it is,
Solve
everybody.
it. You're
It's-
welcome.
we solved happiness for you.
Solved it. Okay, so before we wrap up our time together here, real quick, what is something a listener, someone who's watching, listening to this right now, what is something they can do to get the world, to get themselves one step closer to that vision of everyone in love?
Start at the beginning. How do you define a relationship? And what ingredients do you want in that taco?
The tacos. I'm gonna have tacos for lunch now.
So am I. I made some chorizo
It's
yesterday, so I'm
Tuesday,
making
y'all.
chorizo tacos.
Everyone, go get tacos. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you
Yes.
so much for coming on and sharing your wisdom, your taco analogy. Honestly, your light and your gift with our listeners. And yes, the world would be a beautiful place if when it will be a beautiful place when we all do this work and start living from a place of love. And
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me on. This was so much fun.
It really was. It was a
Yeah.
blast. And are there any final words or ways that our listeners can connect with you or find out more about you and your work that you want to share?
Yeah, you guys can text me or call me at 844-735-6090. You can check out my website, tbrspiritualhealth.com, or on any social platform. I'm on all of them, but I'm personally on LinkedIn. And the final thought is what love legacy are you leaving? How are
Mm.
you teaching people how to love you, and how are you exemplifying love for others?
Oh, I love that. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.